What's happening, fam? L.A.R. movement still moving. Book is entitled Lessons from a Non-Custodial Father at Amazon, Kindle, and Create Space. Link will be in the description box below as usual. Go get it. PayPal link also. They asked me to put it up, so I put it up. Thanks everybody for supporting. This video is entitled The Gynocracy versus Competent Men. I'm going to take my stab at this, okay? I heard BGS talking about the Gynocracy on Bayou Bunny's channel, I believe, and Kendra talked about it a little bit. And I think, in my opinion, it has an issue with competent men, and the reason why I say that is because when you have people who are competent, it turns the stereotype of brothers being incompetent on his head. And what winds up happening is you don't want that guy around because he's competent. And why I'm referencing this, saying the Gynocracy versus the competent men, is because a lot of the times the stereotype and the assumption is incompetent black men get more access to women than competent black men. And to some degree, when you look out into society, that's true. But incompetent black men also play into the stereotype that these men aren't good, they're no good, they're leaders, this is what we're stuck with. And it's kind of confirmation bias. But, and I've said this before, where you have a situation where there are complaints about incompetent men, which are very much so valid, right? And they make sense. But when you hear the complaints about the competent men, they're completely irrational and illogical and make absolutely no sense whatsoever. And the reason is because you need an excuse to not be under the leadership or follow the leadership of a competent man, because what if he takes you farther than you could go on your own, or with or quote unquote leading incompetent men? Now the other thing about that is property. And why I bring this up is because in some aspects you feel like the Gynocracy treats the men like chattel slaves, right? And part of, MGTOW, Red Pill, SYSBM, kind of stepping away, even under the abandonment trope. There's a layer to that competent men walked away. And the thing about that is this: if the competent men walked away, nobody asked why. It's because they weren't going to be ran by people and have their property taken. What do I mean by this? Guys don't want to get married because it's a direct pipeline to your property. If somebody mentally considers me chattel slavery for them, in America, one thing that always is protected, no matter what your race is your property. So what if I may be looked at as a lower class person, but if I have a home, that's my property. If I own a car, that's my property. If I have money in the bank and savings and retirement funds, life insurance policies, if I've invested into these investments, those things are my property. So my property in America is protected because of capitalism. So if I'm competent, then that means I have property. And you don't want to be subjected to my property, because my property is power, even though you feel like I don't have power. So if I can't get your property from you, in some ways you're more powerful than I wanted you to be. So some of these guys walked away to keep their property. I'm not saying all. I'm not saying. What I'm saying is the competent guys, and then this act like the vast majority of brothers are competent. That's a lie. I'm not gonna say 70% of us are competent. I'm not gonna do that. But I'm talking about the gynocracy versus the competent men, because what winds up happening is when you run into these competent men, there's a culture shock that a lot of people don't want to talk about. When a man is well-rounded or he has his stuff together, when you deal with a certain demographic of ladies, there's a underlying disdain for that, despising a guy for having his stuff together, despising a guy for being well-rounded, not liking a guy because he's more intelligent than you thought. He's not easily manipulated, right? People say, they're turned on by these quote-unquote alpha males because of their, not just swag, but because of their aggression. But in some ways, it's kind of like a backhanded compliment, because if he's aggressive and he's swagged out, oh, that's such a turn on. But aggression and swagger has nothing to do with competence. You hope that's part of the confidence that goes with competence, but now that doesn't have to be the case whatsoever. The confidence doesn't actually come from accomplishments. It just comes from being chosen to have for somebody to have sex with. You get chosen, and now that gives you confidence. So in some ways, some of these men have become women because the attention gives them confidence. But the guys who are competent, they're not rocking like that. Like, listen, my accomplishments give me confidence. If you can come and go, that's on you. But I'm going to still be me, the same way I was me before you got here. I'm going to be me if you leave, or after you leave. And that spits into the face of the gynocracy, to the point where you got to ask the quote-unquote gynocracy, if you raise these guys and you're getting nothing from them, and the guy and the communities that are under your quote-unquote leadership are really incompetent, that would mean your leadership is incompetent and you're incompetent. And then to ask competent men to come back, or you need competent men to fix it at the same time you don't like the men, it kind of puts right into the box where okay, this whole time you knew you couldn't get the job done. This ideology that people have daddy issues because I'm not, you got daddy issues because your father wasn't around. And if he was around, he would have actually been of so much service that you would actually not have issues. That's a backhanded compliment to your mother. I'm not saying, single parent household, it should not be the norm. But what I'm saying is, on one end, you say guys abandon you and they were incompetent. But at the same time, if those incompetent guys who abandoned you were in your life, you would actually be a better human being. So it doesn't add up. Because basically what you're saying is, I was stuck with the incompetent parent. That's what it can be viewed as. So, like I said, the gynocracy versus competent men is interesting to me because, the reality of the situation doesn't change. And one of the things I mean by that is this. I hear women talk about technicalities. And law in America is based on technicalities. where you can be dead. Somebody could get you and you're dead to rights, and even have evidence and proof that you did something, and they got you dead to rights. But a technicality can get you off. But the difference is that's the law. But in life, in the real life outside of the court, those technicalities are not going to get you a free pass. You can live on technicalities, but your life is going to suck. You can't, have a farm and say I put water on my crops so they should grow. And what you mean is technically I put water one day, but I didn't water them on a regular basis, but it should grow anyways. That's not going to work. You're not going to have no crops. You're not going to eat. You're not going to make money. Because reality doesn't work in technicalities. But since society has an avenue where technicalities work, you're dealing with what I look at as Gynocracy, which is a technicality culture, against competent men, which is an actual common sense results culture. Reality based. So I think it's let's just say I think the proof is in the pudding, and we all know what it looks like. It's not working. And people are gravitating and wanting more competent men around because what they're used to sucks. So I'm done. Like, share, subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Peace.